Hello guys, you're welcome once again to my channel, and in the last video we were able to look at user registration, and so in this video we're going to be looking at user login. Alright, so in the last video we were able to register a new user. So if I had theson, right, let's just get theson@gmail.com and password, confirm the password, click on register, and yep, you have registration successful. If I head over to the database and I refresh this, you can see theson@gmail.com and the password has been set. So in this video, we are going to be looking at user login. So I'm going to head back to my text editor, and here we are in our text editor. I'm going to move over to our login view for users. So user login view.js. All right. So here is where we are going to be doing most of the work for this video. Let's head back to our browser and I want to check something. Let's go back to our login. And all right, so you can see if I click this button, this is required. If I get in an email here and then I click this button, ask me for a password, and I click and it submits this form. So the first thing I want to do is we want to prevent that from submitting, basically. Just prevent default behavior. So I'm going to do either prevent, right, default, and that should prevent the default behavior of the browser. And now if I get in an email here for our users, all right, this might not be a valid email, and then I get in a password, and yep, it does not refresh this page. Okay, so now that we have done this, the next thing we are going to do is basically we are going to define our state, and we're going to be using our custom hook function, which we called use from fields. And I already did this in register here, so I am going to copy a couple of things from our register view, which we're going to be needing in our login. We're going to need our custom hook function, which is use fields. We're going to need use dispatch and use selector for Redux, and we need our display error message, but we'll not need our sign up action. So once I paste that in here, I'm going to get rid of sign up action here. Okay, I'm going to save this right now, and we have our custom hook function here called use from fields. So we're going to make use of our custom hook function right in here, and I'm also a bit lazy, so I'm going to copy that from here. We are setting just two properties, which is going to be our email and our password. We don't need the name and the confirm password. All right, so right now we have set our email and our password. The next thing we are going to do right now is we are going to have to assign the value of our text fields to meet up with our state here that we have defined. And so to do that, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to have our value here. Our value in here should be fields.email, all right? And our value in here should be fields.password. So fields.password. And that's not all, because if I head over to our use from fields, you can see here our use from field custom hooks expects us to map the ID to the value, and not just our ID being to our value. It also expects us to have an event here, all right, on the input field in which we're attaching this value to. So right here, I'm going to have an onChange event here. An onChange event is going to call our handle field change, and our ID here is going to be email, all right. So I'm going to copy this right now, just copy this too. And I'm going to get down to our password here and paste that. So our ID here is going to be password. All right, so we have password and we have email. And not just that we have our passwords and we have email, we have been able to map our state to our props, which is our value props here. All right, so now that we have successfully done this, what I'm going to do now is I am going to log to the console our fields just to be sure that we have what we are looking for. And if I head over to my browser and let me get my console, let's see if I get this email in here and I get anything as a password and I click here, you can see that we have an object here that returns our email as well as our password. So now that we have the object that returns our email and our password, we are then going to go ahead to set up our services, our actions, as well as our reducers. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go into our auth service, and right in our auth service, I'm going to have another service here, and I'm going to call this service login user. And of course, we want to export this const login user, and just similar to our sign up service, it's going to take our credentials, all right, and I'm going to also copy this because I'm kind of lazy, and I'm going to paste that in here, and the URL is going to be /user/login, and we expect the credentials, and I'm going to change this to not sign up. So let's have login URL here, and let's have login URL here. And once we have successfully set up our login user service, I'm going to save this, and we have an error here saying HTTP is not defined. All right, we would need to create an instance of this because it's a class. And yep, now that should do. All right, so right now we have successfully created our service. So I'm going to go over to our actions for our user auth action. I'm going to create a new action here, and our action is going to be called user login action. So I'm gonna, but let me not waste so much time. I'm going to copy this action right now, and I'm going to scroll down here and just paste this. So I'm going to change this to user login action. All right, user login action, and of course it takes the credentials, and we want to dispatch an event here of restart auth response loading. And if it has a property of success and the response success is true, I'm going to dispatch an event here called login success. After we have dispatched a login success, if the success is false, then I'm going to dispatch sign up error. All right, so right in here, I'm going to do a couple of things. After we have dispatched login success, we are then going to say call a set timeout. And for our set timeout, I'm going to say this should take about 1,500 milliseconds, which is about 1.5 seconds. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to redirect the user. So property history.push, and I'm going to redirect him to /user. And not just that, I'm also going to set our token right in here to the browser. So I'm going to say local storage set item. And for our user, we want to call our user token alias to be user token, because that is that what we called it? Let me see. If I should head over to our route, the JS, we called that, yep, user token. So I'm going to call this user token. So local storage set item user token, and our token is going to come with our response, and we're going to say restore token. All right, so now we set the token, we dispatch an event of success, and then we redirect the user to his dashboard. Okay, so I'm going to save this right now, and we have an error here saying props is not defined. All right, so we are going to pass props here. So that means that when we are calling this action in our view, would have to pass the credentials as well as the props. Okay, so now I'm going to save this, and I'm going to go into our auth reducer, user auth reducer. And within our user auth reducer, I am going to create a couple of things here. So right after our sign up error, I'm going to, let's come in here, and we are also supposed to change this to login error, sign up error, so login error. And I'm going to make a couple of changes here. Let's see, I'm going to copy sign up success and sign up error. And I'm going to place that comma in here and just paste them here. And I'm going to have, say, I need to change this to login success. And then we're going to change this to login error. And for our login success, I'm going to call this redirecting to dashboard. And that means I'm going to come back in here, and for login success, I'm going to just dispatch the action without any data being passed to it. All right, so for login success, we have things set up this way, and for login error, I'm going to just pass the whatever is the response message. All right, so I'm going to save this right now, and we have successfully done this in our reducer. All right, so now we can be able to head back into our login view, and right in our login view.js, which is for users, we are then going to import our action. So our action, and this is coming from let's see, coming from store actions user auth and auth actions, and I'm going to call user login action. All right, so user login action. So right here, what I'm going to do now is once we click on the user login button, I'd have to dispatch, oh boy, I actually forgot to create an instance of a couple of things in here. And let me not waste so much time. I'm going to get them from the register view, which is our dispatch and our selector. I'm going to copy this right now, and I'm going to paste this here. So this is going to create an instance of dispatch, and as well as an instance of our auth response, which just destructures and gets the value of our user auth response, which is what we are using in our user auth reducer. So user auth response. All right, so right now we are then going to call our dispatch here function, and our dispatch function is going to dispatch our user login action. And remember, our user login action takes two parameters. The first is the fields, and the second parameter is going to be the props, which we called here, our props right here. But there are a couple of things we ought to first do, because as you can see, we are trying to redirect the user to the dashboard, but we have not really defined our props in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call our props, and in order for this view to be able to have the history props, our browser history props, we would have to go into our login.js, which is for our user, and I'm going to pass the props in here too. And in here, I'm going to get down and call these props and pass this to as props to our component. And so if I were to come back right here, let's just comment this out right now. And if I were to call the use effect, so basically what the use effect does is the use effect serves as our component will mount, component did update, component will just receive props. And the use effect works in a way as such that if I should call the use effect and I pass no parameter in here, it's just going to run once, and that is when the component is mounted. If I were to pass a parameter in here within this array, as many parameters as possible, is going to be called whenever those parameters change value. And that is where we talk about them, component did update. All right, our component will receive props. Okay, so what I want to do right now is that I'm going to just call this only once when the component is being rendered. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get rid of this, and within our return statement, I'm just going to leave this blank, and right in here, I'm going to console.log props. All right, so remember, if you pass nothing into this array, our use effect is only going to run once, and this is only going to happen whenever the component is mounted. If I pass a parameter here, our use effect is going to run every single time that value is changed. All right, so right now I'm going to save this, and we have an error here saying use effect is not defined. So for us to be able to use use effect, we would have to import that here, same way we do with use state, use effect, and I'm going to save this right now. And so I'm going to head over to my browser, and if I refresh this, and let me drag this up forward. All right, so right now you can see we have an object here that has a props, and then before we can now access the history object. So what we are then going to do is, because within our auth actions, we are simply calling props here, and we're saying props.history.push. And the value of that props we are calling is this guy here. But this guy is nested inside of a props. And the reason why it's nested inside of a props is because within our login page.js right here, we are passing props here, and we are assigning this to this. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to just get rid of our use effect, lifecycle method, and sorry, not lifecycle method, oh my god, hooks function, React hooks function. And I'm going to comment this out, and I'm going to call props.props. All right, I'm going to save this right now. I'm going to get back to our browser. All right, let's do this. So I'm going to get one of our users which we have created. And remember, my passwords are always password. So I'm going to use desmond101@gmail.com, and yep, I'm going to copy this guy here, paste him in here, and I'm going to call the password as password. If I click on this, what happened? Let me see, go over to the console, and we have a success of false. We have a message here saying email address has already been taken, name field is required. That is, let's see about this. We are dispatching user login action, and within our user login action is using our sign up service. So let's change this to not sign up service, let's change this to our user login service. So user login action. Oh boy, we have not imported this right here. So let's import our login user and login user. So let's call this login user. Save that once again and get back to our browser. And now let's log in with this guy here. And my passwords are always password. If I click on login, what happens? Is it invalid username or password? All right, invalid username or password because that is in capital letter. So let's get this to small letters. Login. And yep, you can see it redirected us to our user route. All right, so what I'm going to do, first of all, let me clear my console and just local storage dot remove item, and I'm going to remove our user token item. So if I refresh that now, that redirects me back to the login page. All right, so we can see that it's successfully redirecting us to the login page. But if I were to enter an invalid credential here, all right, and I clicked on login, it sends us no message, it doesn't redirect us. But if I go over to the console, we have a message here saying invalid username or password. So just like our register view, we want to be able to get the error message to be displayed within our view. And so to do that, I'm going to head back in here, And right in our login view, I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to be doing a lot of copy and paste from our register view, so forgive me for that. We're going to come to, first off, I'm going to need a couple of things here. So first off, I'm going to copy this, right? Boom, copy this to here and get them in our login view, right? Where is this? This is after our H2 welcome to user register page. And I'm going to paste that in here. So what else is left? Let's get back in here too. And I'm also going to need this function here, this success message function. And let's get this here, paste our success message function. All right. And I'm going to save this. And let me see, there's another thing here that we need. All right, nothing again. All right, so for the benefit of those who did not watch the last video, I'm just going to go through this. What is basically happening here is we have auth response, which we have extracted using our use selector from our state. And this is coming from our user auth, which if we head over to our root reducer, our user auth here, which is mapped to our user auth reducer. And if I move over to our user auth reducer, you can see here that our user auth response is a property of our user auth, which is our user auth reducer, which has been aliased to our user auth. So right here, we are saying state the user auth response. All right, so next up is that we are then going to come in here. And I have two different divs here. The first div here is showing serve is called auth error. And the essence of this div is to be able to handle whenever we display multiple error messages. And then the second div is to show auth response. All right. So what is simply happening here is if our auth response is not an empty string and our auth response, the success is true, we want to set the success message of auth response.message. Basically, it's setting the inner HTML of our auth response div here. But if the user is not successfully logged in, and that means the message is false, the success response is false, we call our display error message function. And our display error message function helps us to be able to display our error messages if they are more than one. So basically what it just does is it kind of loops through our error messages, and then it sets the inner HTML property of this auth error to that error message, which is right in here. All right, so now that we have this successfully done, I'm going to save this right now. And if I head over to my browser, let's enter an invalid credential and see what happens. Click on login, and you see here we have your password must be 8 characters and above. All right, let me get correct username, desmond101 at gmail.com, and let me enter an invalid password. Click on login, and we have action failed error. Why? Let me check that up in the console, and we have action failed error while we have an invalid username and password. And within our login view, yep, I think I know what the problem is coming from. Right here, we are calling authResponse.error. authResponse.error. And so what I can do to fix this is I'm going to head down to our API. And right in our API here, I'm going to add something in here, error. So I'm going to add response message. So basically what is happening, sorry about that. What's happening here is that because our auth response is set to only error and not message, if a message is being sent, it would not recognize the value of that message. So in order to be able to fix that, we have to pass our response to both our error and our message. So whichever of them we ever call, it's going to have the data for us. So right now, if I head back in here, and let's just get rid of this. And if I click on login, you can see we have invalid username and password. If I had a very short password, you can see your password must be 8 characters and above. And then if I enter my correct credentials and I click on login, you can also see right now that it is showing our error message and at the same time showing our loading message. So to also fix that too, I'm going to clear this and local storage remove item. Let's remove this user token. And to fix that also, what we can do is I'm going to head back in here and I'm going to write a function here. I'm going to call that function, after preventing the default behavior, this function is going to be called clearOffDiv. And this function is going to be responsible for clearing our error message in our HTML property. So I'm going to call this function here clearOffDiv error. And our clearOffDiv error is simply going to call the instance of our auth error, and it's going to call our auth error, so document query selector, and I'm going to call this auth error. All right, and I'm going to set the inner HTML property of this guy here, to be an empty string. That should do now. So if I head back to our browser, let's see I entered the wrong credentials. You can see invalid username and password, the password with 8 characters and above. And now if I enter the correct credentials, you can see that disappears, redirecting you to dashboard, and we have successfully logged in.